Well, we are very fortunate tonight to have on our show this evening Dr. Robert Graves. He wrote a book called Psychic Sight. And the premise of the book is about intention. And as we all know, how the more positive energy that we put into something, the more positive the results that we get. And I was just thinking about that today as I was out at the shopping mall. I was thinking about getting a parking place up front, and my mom always used to tell me as a kid, she used to say that, all you have to do is ask your angels and they'll arrange for a front parking spot. Well, just as we pulled into the complex, I was really thinking about it really hard and putting my intentions into it. And lo and behold, right there's the front door, and we pulled out as we were pulling in. And so it was like, putting my positive energy out there and asking for miracles, I think sometimes is, something that we can all do. And that's just a little test of faith, but of course, that's something that, anyone can do at any time. And I'm sure that you, Bill, have, had some experiences with positive intentions and getting what you desired in life. Is that correct?
I have done the same thing with the parking spot. When I pull into an area in Florida, normally in the summertime with the sunshine and it's really hot outside, I always ask for a shade spot. More times than not, I seem to get what I ask for. And whatever you put out there, it seems like that's what you'll get, whether it's good or bad. So it's always important to use your positive energy.
I think that's a good point to make. One of my best friends in high school, when I first met him, he's from Holland, and his mother told me, she said, I'm going to die at 58. She said, my mom died at 58, I'm going to die at 58, I'm going to die from cancer. And unfortunately, I saw her a few years back, right before she passed, and she said, it's my 58th birthday and I have cancer. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, how much of that is genetics and how much is that of just really, not really wishing it upon yourself, but convincing yourself and bringing it to yourself. And I think that, sometimes when we have, illnesses, we have actually, made ourselves, believe that this is what's going to happen, and it is what happens. So I think that when we want good things to happen, we have to kind of, stay in a positive mindset. I know a lot of our listeners are having financial difficulties right now, especially during the holiday season. And, we've had a lot of calls in the recent weeks about being unemployed and, wanting to find another job. And one of the things I've been telling them is, go with a positive attitude, because prospective employers are going to pick up your problems. They're going to pick up your negativity, and they're going to, want to, not want to hire you if you have a negative attitude. Be sure that you've experienced that in the workplace, for yourself, where, the people there maybe had negative attitudes and they didn't stay very long.
That is true. All the time. With if you have a negative or not exactly a positive attitude, it never helps you.
Right. I know I suffer from illnesses sometimes because of my stress level, and I've actually, I've been able to overcome that by taking the stresses out of my life and really just concentrating on positive energy and positive things. But, when bad things happen to good people, sometimes it's difficult to put ourselves in a position not to have that negativity, not to have that, feeling of, well, nothing is good going to happen to me. A lot of my clients here in the Latin world, believe in black magic, and anything bad that happens, it must be black magic because it couldn't possibly be themselves. And I'm not blaming them, necessarily, or, they're bringing it to themselves, but, just concentrating on, everything that's negative will definitely bring negative results. We talked a few shows ago about a study they had done in Japan, and they had told rice it's a good rice, and they told jar of rice that it was bad rice. And within a few days, the rice they told was bad turned black and molded, and after 2 weeks, it was, unedible. But the rice that they told was beautiful and healthy and good for them, they had results that were miraculous, where they were actually able to consume that rice even after, being in the same environment as the bad rice. They had good results from that. And there's also the same study, studied ice crystals and, playing negative music and playing, a lot of negative things around them. The ice crystals weren't able to form properly. They were deformed and they weren't beautiful. But when they played classical music and when they played, things that were positive around them, they saw that these ice crystals were even, bigger and brighter, in some aspects than the ones that, normally form in nature. So it's a pretty amazing, results there. So, one of the things I want to say to the listeners is that it's important to stay positive. It's important to surround yourself by positive people and positive influences. And I'm sure, Bill, you've probably found that in your life, too. When you've been around a lot of negative people, you kind of feel bad. Even though you're not a psychic necessarily, you still have that, sensitivity.
I do. I have that sensitivity. And the study that you were talking about reminds me of a similar one on blessing your food. There was a study done where they believe by blessing your food, you will receive more nutrients from it.
That's correct. Robert, are you with us this evening? Yeah, I think we're having some technical difficulties. We're just going to wait. Mike Casey is our producer for the show, and she is going to try to get Robert on the line. In the meantime, as we, progress with life, during the holiday seasons, it's important to stay positive. Even if we don't have our families around us, we can make friends. We can be around people that, are part of our life and a part of our reality. And I think that's, as I was saying before, that's an important part. Robert, are you there with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you, Casey, for fixing that problem for me. Robert, I'm so fascinated by your book. I have really been looking forward to speaking to you on air. We've had a couple of pre-interviews, but, it's not the same as, really hearing about your power of positive thinking and power of positive intentions. Can you give us a little bit of background on your book? It's called Psychic Dice. Can you give us a background as far as when it was written and why it was written?
Well, the name of the book is actually called The Art of Psychic Dice, and
okay.
the reason I wrote it is because back in the 70s, when I first began realizing there were paranormal things happening around casinos, specifically at craps tables, with events that I had witnessed, it was impossible to talk about it directly. And so the inception of the book was, if you begin talking about the magical, metaphysical, spiritual overtly, they could take you away in white coats. And I wanted to change that. And so originally that's where the whole thing began, was to go after that and to legitimize the whole area of the paranormal in general, and more specifically telepathy, PK, and those kinds of things. So that's why I actually started it.
I was going to say that one of the things about, your premises, the telekinesis, can you kind of explain to us the techniques that you use for your power of positive thinking?
Well, I think the place to begin with it is that I try to go beyond positive thinking. Everybody's into that. Not that it's a negative at all, but you've got to have that. But building on that, I'm hoping, is that you basically want to be able to use emotions and suggestion, and beyond that, you also need agreement to begin with. And so it's about putting those together. A quick overview is basically what you really want to have happen is you want a group to simultaneously, at the exact same instance, to experience deeply the same deeply felt emotional intention. And that's really the center of it all. That's what you're trying to do, and that doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish. What the intention is, that's what you're going for. And within this context, what I discovered, because I saw it all the time at a craps table, was that the emotions that you're producing really don't have to have anything at all to do necessarily with what it is that your intention is. So if you're looking for an 11, you can have an agreement as long as it's emotionally felt and it happens among everybody simultaneously. It can be about anything. It can be about politics. It can be about the time of day. It can be about whatever you're eating, just so that everybody has the same sort of output at the same movement, that same moment. And it hypes and empowers your intentions, basically. That was the big revelation from the whole thing.
I see. So the necessity to have that group mentality or that group consciousness to be focused on the positive, but also on the results.
Well, you need an intention to underlie it, but the thing is like whatever it is that your emotion is about. It was my discovery is that the emotion doesn't necessarily have to be about what it was. Again, if you want an 11 to happen, you want the dice to do that, you can be talking politics. And as long as everybody agrees to that, that's what that tends to be what you all put out simultaneously. One of the reasons is because you're all agreeing. I think there are a lot of other reasons that go in. Go ahead.
No, I see. I understand what you're saying.
Well, that is the point for the most part, and it's the things that I think a lot of people are missing. You know, if you're dealing with people who are trying to individually accomplish something or as a group to accomplish something, if they get together for a faith healing session, the thing that isn't in their consciousness is that they're if it's a faith healing session, for instance, they're worried about what's happening to their aunt or their mother or their relative or the friend of theirs, and that worry is in their way. Right. In fact, they need to shift what they're doing to something else. In other words, they all are there for the same intention. We all want the same thing to happen. That underlies everything. But then beyond that, you can change the subject to something else, but you want it emotionally loaded, as emotionally loaded as you can possibly get it.
Right. So the most important thing there is to have the emotion, not just the thought, but also the emotions, behind that thought. And it must be something that has to be important to the group or to the individual, to the point where it's not only do they want it to happen, but they believe it's going to happen.
Well, that's always important, yes. It's always better if you can get people to really believe that they can do it. Often they don't, and that's the biggest thing that's usually in their way. I remember going to a spoon-bending party at one point. Jack Houck, Houck. You can find him on the web. It was an engineer, and he put together these spoon-bending parties where you bring your own spoons. Or you can use some of his, and what you end up doing is everybody, 30, 40, 50 people in the room begin screaming. First they do a visualization to make it all happen or to begin attracting those kinds of energies and to put out their intention also, which is more important. But then to hype themselves up emotionally, we all start yelling, bend, 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 bend. And it's kind of crazy, and it's kind of fun at the same time, and the fun is part of where the emotion comes from, that's hyping what we're attempting to accomplish. But after that, then, they don't let it go. And letting it go is one of the big parts of it, because while they're going bend, 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 for instance, I was standing next to a hypnotherapist. There was a group of hypnotherapists in Las Vegas. They were one of Houck's parties. And he was straining. You could see him. He was holding the spoon as tightly as he could. His face was all contorted. His body was tightened up. And he was yelling, bend, bend, bend. But what the energy that he was putting out actually had nothing at all to do with bending the spoon. It was just screaming, emotionally screaming, I can't do this. So it helps. It helps a whole lot if people ultimately believe they can, but most of them often don't. And that's one of the reasons why you need the letting it go process. Why that's a huge factor in what all of the intention masters talk about when they talk about this stuff. You just got to let it go. And I didn't know how to release him at that point. I didn't quite understand it as deeply. I was just more taken in with seeing him, but now I do. And I think that you've got to also consciously let it go. And at that point, you forget that you can't do it. You forget what's going on and you change it to something else. And recently I came up with a really good idea. At least I think it's a great idea. Around here, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area, we've got all these posters for the Beatles, and because they've just re-released all of their songs. And Let It Be has been around a lot, the song Let It Be. I think one of the things that you could consciously do, and I haven't done this yet, but I'm pretty certain it would work because it's such a kind of spiritual song, and it has such a lyric that just fits into it. If you could change everybody's consciousness for a moment to that song, Let It Be. And I think it's beautiful, and it takes them away from what the intention was to begin with, lets them let it go, and lets their intention become what it was.
Right, and I think that's really what the message of the Beatles was in the 60s, was to let go of the hate in the world and let go of the war. And, the war effort was about putting that peaceful thoughts out there to kind of, combat the negativity that was caused by, our involvement in the conflict. And, with that song, it really is, just if the world, even the song Imagine, imagine the world as a peaceful place, imagine, all the things that could happen if we just, believe. And I think that's an important place to be at as far as, where, the world could be if everyone thought about, all the good things in the world and not necessarily the bad things.
I know
you had some questions for what? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that one is, I agree with you entirely that ultimately it has to work out there, but it's a really, really difficult one for me. the whole idea, because one of the things that did happen was after we left Vietnam, the communists came down and they literally slaughtered 2 to 3 million, depending on whose figures you use, of the Cambodians and South Vietnamese. They just took them out and killed them all. And so it's one of the issues I'm having all the time with our spiritual stuff, how we both infuse our civilization with that sensibility and with a peaceful sensibility, but at the same time really deal with the bad guys who are really out there and
I support the troops, and and as far as that goes. But I'm just saying that the thought about the peace movement was not so much get us out of Vietnam, but make the world a peaceful place. And of course we were there for a reason. As you were stating with the communists, that's something that a righteous fight as far as fighting for the freedom of the people. I totally agree with that. But I was really just the concept of peace, the concept of bringing that hope to the world. And I think that's really, one of the underlying messages, even though the peace movement wasn't necessarily very patriotic in those terms, but just the thought of, what if there wasn't a war? What if it was possible to be in a peaceful, world to the point where we don't have to have conflict? So,
well, I even have a
some questions for Robert.
Okay. Well, I just had a suggestion also. I hear people talk about some experiments were done. For instance, during the Israeli conflicts with Lebanese, people went over and they did meditations, and it caused the Israelis to shell less and to basically back away from that war. And again, that was an example where it may have cost the freedom-loving peoples a whole lot, because Lebanon had been the most free country, Arab country, although it was more Christian in the Middle East. Now it's no longer Christian. And it's got problems in there, but serious problems with Hezbollah. What I'm suggesting, I think we could take our stuff further and say, instead of focusing necessarily on just a generalized peace issue, is that we need to make our intention more specific, and we might be focusing on the Ayatollahs, or we might be focusing on the Hezbollah people. Instead of just putting it out there sort of in general, let's get specific about it, and let's see those people become more peaceful as a result of our meditations. And I heard at one point that it takes, I think it was like the square root of 1% of a population could have an effect if they were putting out peaceful vibes. Let's see if we can do that. Let's have an experiment where we experiment on the Ayatollahs and on the Wahhabis and Al-Qaeda and the communists and the drug cartels and all the bad guys in the world. Let's try to make them more peaceful, I think. I think it would be a great experiment.
I think that that's something that, in future shows that we should, have a meditation to dedicate to just that purpose. I think that would be a wonderful idea. I hope that you can be a part of that. Bill, you had some questions for Robert?
I do. My first question was, Robert, how long have you practiced the art of psychic dice?
It started back in the 70s. It comes out of a lot of things that were going on. I have a whole lot of paranormal things coming on. I'm kind of like Dr. Rob is, although I don't go into clairvoyance, and I don't go into afterlife things, and I don't contact easily. But with paranormal things happening, they happen a lot to me, and they just go on around me. And it was just beginning back in the 70s when friends took me up to a casino. So it started there, and it's just been gradually developing through the years. As I looked at it to begin with, I wanted to find out how it worked, and so I started taking notes. I started hanging out at casinos going, wow, there's magic up here. What can I do? How does that happen? What's it all about? And then I realized I had a book at some point. And so and it's been a long process, just moving it through, because each part of making a book is involved in a learning experience in itself. But it's gone on for a long time with a whole lot of experiences, especially at casinos and with psychokinetic energies going on.
That's pretty exciting. Another question of mine, not to be negative, but I was curious, what happens when you go into a casino and consistently start winning? Have you ever experienced maybe they would prefer that you not play anymore?
Unfortunately, I haven't had that experience yet. It's my contention that casinos ultimately are the survivors of the fittest when it comes to gambling in general, but especially the paranormal. The thing that frustrated me the most, just drove me nuts back in the 70s was that everybody underneath everything was being telepathic, if you will, but also at casinos it was psychokinetic, and nobody copped to it. Everybody was just lying their rear ends off about it. And what I've seen at casinos is that you've got experts there at disrupting psychokinetic things that are going on. And again, part of the way that they play off of it is to pretend that it's not happening to begin with. And if you believe it's not happening, then you can't recreate it. That's part of why I went in to look at it more closely, because it just drove me nuts. But I haven't had the experience yet where I've made a huge killing out there. And becoming rich at anything is not a really simple thing to do. But I do consistently win. And one of the things that I would like to do, one of the reasons that I'm beginning to do these radio shows, is that I want to attract a group. And I've got several of the groups that it's all based on that I would like to work it around to get enough people to become to put a group together here in San Francisco where we practice it, develop our psychokinetic energy, specifically around craps, and use for other things also, but then go to casinos and become the person that they want to outlaw because we're using psychokinetic energy, and they're not going to have any other reason to do it except that we're just too lucky.
I see. And I have one more question. Where
Sure.
can I and our listeners find your book?
ArtofPsychicDice.com. ArtofPsychicDice.com. It's my website. I self-publish for a lot of reasons.
And do you have a phone number that can reach you at?
415.
Robert, do they have a number? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the number is 415-563-2176. I'm interested in all issues and all questions, and you can also email me at Robert E. Graves, RobertEgraves, at Comcast.net. I'm interested in anybody that would like to chat about it.
Can you repeat your phone number one more time for us?
Sure.
Yeah, can you repeat your phone number for us one more time?
415-563-2176.
Okay. Well, Robert, I really hate to cut you short, but this is only a half-hour edition tonight. But I would love to have you come back again in a few weeks. And I know that Wednesday night is your best night, so we do look forward to having you back on the show. And hopefully we can do a meditation at that time, and we can, put some of these things that you've discussed with us into practice. And I would encourage all the listeners to, check out his website and order the book. We will definitely go into more details in our next segment with you. And, Bill, thanks so much for being on the show this evening. And once again, Friday night show will be our call-in show. And so if you'd like to call us here at the station, our number is 310-861-2343. Anything that you want to say to the listeners, Bill?
Dr. Rob, when we jumped into it, I forgot to thank you to begin with, and so I'd like to make sure that we do that now. Second thing is I have a much more extensive presentation that includes a lot more information that I think there's more new stuff in it that we haven't seen out there. Eventually, I'd like to become the go-to guy for talk shows when it comes to PK, so I'm going to be infusing myself with even more information all the time about this. And it's something that I want to stay on top of and become, again, as I said, the go-to guy. I really appreciate you having me on. I would like everybody out there, I really want everybody out there to buy a copy of my book. But even within all that, I definitely want to talk to you again because I have something I think that will interest you and all of your listeners a whole lot more.
Well, we can't wait to have you back on, Robert. And once again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Robert. And we will speak to you tomorrow. Tomorrow night's show will be at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we look forward to having you listen to the show, and have a great night.
Will do. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dr. Rob.